So today we're going to talk about stress. It's amazing how many people don't understand or don't want to accept the impact on their physical health and mental health of the stress. And they just brush it off, ignore. And I've heard things like, well, everybody's stressed. Okay, but let's do something about it because you are diagnosed with a serious disease because you are in a very stressful situation. So let's talk about the types of stress that are in our lives. Let's talk about is stress always a bad thing? Which are the good things of stress? How much stress and the bad things? Let's talk about the fact that you often hear that someone is under too much stress, and you too may feel the same way. But what exactly is stress? How can someone withstand more stress than others? Let's take a look at those questions. Let's first talk about a typical day. I will exaggerate a little bit, but you might be able to see yourself in this situation. Let's say you've been busy, so busy to prepare for tomorrow's meeting that you didn't realize the hour. It's already midnight and you're bushed. You need to wind down, so you go and watch TV because you can't wind down, you can't fall asleep. At 1 o'clock, you're finally relaxed enough to go to sleep, but you suddenly wake up in sweats and note the time, 3 o'clock a.m. You go to the bathroom, but you come back and you can't go to sleep. You start counting sheep backwards. Tomorrow's busy schedule is just racing through your mind. 40 minutes later, you are still lying there and counting backwards from 100, trying to fall asleep. The next day, thing you know, the alarm clock is ringing off the nightstand. You can't believe it's already 6 a.m. in the morning. You don't want to get up. It feels like you just got to sleep, but you have to pry your eyes open to see the clock. It's 6:10 and you don't dare hit the snooze button again because you might not get up. You head to the kitchen, you start knocking at the doors of your children to get up. Before the water even can begin to drip through the coffee filter, your brain is trying to figure out how to get the kids up, fed, and off to school, take a shower, get dressed, finish off that last report, and get on the road before the traffic jam starts. Isn't that stressful? These are so many things you have to consider. And finally, the kids are off to school. You're dressed and ready to go when you realize that you haven't eaten. No worry, I'll grab a coffee and a bagel from the cafe on your way to the office, the most unhealthy breakfast there is. At work, what is happening there? It's crazy as usual. Your coworker is sick, so you offer to work through lunch to cover his clients or her clients between meetings while eating an apple or sipping your fourth or fifth coffee for the day. You realize that you forgot to pay your bills. Then your daughter calls that she reminds you that she has a soccer practice tonight. It's already 5 o'clock p.m. and you are in a crazy vortex and it's not finished yet. And you can't wait to get home. But you first must go and, let's say, drop off clothes at the cleaners, shop for groceries, work your way through the traffic to pick up your daughter at the soccer practice and your son from daycare. Now it's almost 7 p.m. and you just now are starting to cook dinner so late while trying to prepare for tomorrow's meeting and help the kids with their homeworks. And of course, get those bills paid After dinner, you're exhausted. Looking at a pile of dishes and cluttered kitchen, you wonder how long you will have to work like this. You have a final cup of coffee, clean up, and get back to prepare for tomorrow. It's only Monday, and you feel like it's Thursday. You're so beat up. Does this sound like you? Or perhaps you're thinking that this would be a relaxing day compared to yours. I don't know. Even if your day isn't that chaotic, we all experience some degree of stress. And let's talk about stress. What is stress now? You probably think of stress as inherently bad, but this isn't always the case. Just as bones and muscles need physical exercise to stay strong, we also need certain amounts of stress to stay healthy. A complete lack of stress would not be a good thing. So there are 6 major types of stress, each of which can have good or bad effects. Physical stress, chemical stress, electromagnetic stress, psychic or mental stress, nutritional stress, thermal stress. I will try to talk about most of them today. So, what is physical stress? Because it's easier to recognize by people, it's easier to feel, to know about. That's why I'm starting with it. The good part of this physical stress is that physical stress in the form of movement or exercise is very beneficial. Hands down, we must exercise and move in order to be healthy. The actual stress comes from loading the muscles and bones of our body under the influence of gravity. If you remember, you watched on the TV very often that astronauts in space need a regular exercise in order to counteract the loss of bone and muscle mass that occurs under zero gravity conditions and the conditions they are. So adequate movement and exercise also helps us to maintain an optimal metabolic rate. The metabolic rate, if you don't know, is the rate at which all physical and chemical processes take place within your body. So all this keeping us from becoming overweight. Considering that only 8% of men and 3% of women exercise regularly, and that about 60% of the Americans and Canadians are overweight at present, you can see that we are in a great need of more of this good stressor. So that has also a bad side. And what is the bad side? Over exercising is one of the bad sides that can be every bit as bad as not exercising enough. While under exercising can contribute to becoming fat and sluggish inside, over exercises can cause immune system suppression. And this is very serious. This can lead to increased incidence of upper respiratory infection, chronic fatigue, and a number of other maladies. Extreme exercise for athletes, for example, is often linked to poor performance and increased incidence of injury. In people who don't exercise is very often the cognitive side. You know, sometimes when you're so tired physically, that has the same impact on the body as over exercising. You start bumping into tables, chairs, into walls because cognitively you're not there. So another form of adverse physical stress is poor posture. Posture has a significant influence on breathing, muscle function, joint health, circulation of fluids and blood throughout the body, and internal organs support. When the body structure is in the balance, the rest of the system follows. So this is very, very important to understand. The chemical stress. What is the good side of the chemical stress? Our bodies are full of chemicals, naturally produced chemicals that are essential for our health. The work of producing these key chemicals is a necessary stress for the body. For example, when your body systems are working correctly, exercise results in chemical stress. Chemical adaptations in the form of hormonal changes that alter your body's biochemistry to increase protein synthesis, energy production, and myriad other chemical reactions. The action of sunlight on the skin results in the production of vitamin D and the regulation of the hormones like melatonin and cortisol, both chemical reactions. So plant and animal foods, preferably raised organically, are made up of organic chemicals, vitamins, enzymes, proteins, and fats that are needed for us to survive. The bad side of all this is of the chemical stress. Today, we are bombarded with thousands upon thousands of chemicals that were not around thousands or even 100 years ago. Many of these chemicals are synthetic, and our bodies do not have mechanisms to neutralize them. Synthetically manufactured medical drugs, such as aspirin, are amongst the most common forms of unfavorable chemical stress. Other examples could be of dangerous chemicals. Stressors are agricultural chemicals such as pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and other certain fertilizers. You don't realize, but they go through in our bodies with the food. These chemicals are often made from the same formulas used to make biological weapons. Yet nearly 2 billion pounds of these chemicals are sprayed on our food each year in the United States. This is statistics from the United States. Many health problems have been linked to this form of chemical stress in the body. The third stressor is a psychic or mental stress. The good side of it is that thinking and using your mind productively represents good psychic or mental stress. Having a plan or something, or setting your goals in your life and doing the work to achieve them is also a positive form of stress. Other examples include overcoming adversity to become a stronger, better person. This is stress. Without psychic stress, our mind would just not develop fully or be lazy. So that has a bad side also. The mental stress, a common form of bad psychic stress, is focusing on things that you don't want in life. Very interesting. Most of us do, and it needs a conscious effort to change that. Instead, to change that into focusing on things of what you do want. That we call stinking thinking. Other forms of psychic stress include verbal abuse from others. studying so much that your mental faculties begin to diminish, and challenging religious or spiritual beliefs that are imposed upon you, even if self-imposed, being rushed or taking on more work or responsibility that you can handle will also produce unhealthy psychic stress. So the next stress is the nutritional stress, which is very common for all of us. It has good, again, and a bad side. What is the good side? Eating in accordance with your metabolic type, eating organic foods, and not over or under eating are all representative of good nutritional stress. In these instances, the term stress is used to indicate the stress of digestion, assimilation, and metabolizing of foods, nutrients. For example, your body must be stressed with the challenge of extracting the nutrition from our food, or it will become lazy, much like a person's muscles become lazy if you put them in a sling or cast and you don't use them. So what is the bad side? Eating too much, too little, or eating the wrong food proportions for your metabolic type are unhealthy forms of nutritional stress. And here I would like to insert a little example which I hope will be beneficial for you. When I was very young, I was overweight, quite overweight. And in my school in Bulgaria, we had a assigned doctor that was coming every 3 days, or for 3 days a week in school, and we could be checked up and stuff like that. So this doctor wants to talk to my parents and tell them that if I continue like this, I will end up with diabetes, heart disease, or something like that. We have to do something about it. So in a whole grade, I was fifth grade, we were only 3 people who were overweight. I was still considered overweight, but not obese. There was one girl who was obese, and me and another girl who were overweight. So they suggested that camp where we go for 20 days and they teach us how to eat, how much, what foods to combine. They taught us about diabetes, about heart disease, how much salt, which salt, when and where to eat salty foods, how much sugar, why not sugar. We had, for instance, snack of half a grapefruit. That was it. I lost 5 kilos and I kept them because I learned how to feed my body. What are the needs of my body? And there was that cardiologist in the camp who was working with us. And he told me something I will never forget. He said, every excessive gram you put in your mouth to feed your body excessively overloads your heart and it shortens the lifespan of your heart. I will never forget this. Since then, throughout my teens and when I was younger, I would never overeat. That was a great thing to do. So, consuming foods with toxins such as pesticides, herbicides, food preservatives, colorings, thickeners, emulsifiers, and the like are very, very stressful to the body as well. In my opinion, this type of stress from food is responsible for a large percentage of disease today. Thermal stress. Continuing with the next and final stress I'll be talking about, the thermal stress has a good side. What is the good side of the thermal stress? It's maintaining your body temperature at 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6 Fahrenheit is the most obvious of the good thermal stressors. When it's not hot, when it's hot or cold outside, the thermoregulatory system is stressed in order to keep your internal temperature constant. It's good to stress this system now and again to maintain its dynamic capacity. What is the bad side of it? Anything that burns you in a form of adverse thermal stress is a bad side. In addition, the opposite thermal stress would be anything that brings your body temperature too low for the extended period of time. And what stress does to your body? The type of stress described just above can be broken down into two groups: internal and external. The external stressors are things that stress the body from the outside, such as sunlight, physical pain caused by injury or other external forces, emotional trauma, and toxic chemicals exposure. Internal stressors come from within the body and are most often the reaction to external stresses. For example, if you're repeatedly exposed to toxic chemicals, cancer or other disease may develop. Even if the toxic chemicals are removed, cancer will continue to stress enormously the body systems. If you are in an unhappy relationship, an external situation in this case, you will experience a chronic stress response within the body. Chronic stressors cause elevated stress hormones in the body, leading to immune suppression. I mentioned yesterday that the immune system, the musculature, is a source for the immune system for when we are sick. So that would lead to immune suppression, the inability to heal, and eventually to get diseased. So let me explain briefly the nervous system. The nervous system works, how it works, that will help clarify how stress affects our body. The nervous system is a combination of two systems that work together. The peripheral nervous system controls conscious movement and the central nervous system, which contains the autonomic nervous system, controls those actions in the body that you don't normally regulate through conscious thoughts, as blood pressure, digesting, eliminating foods, releasing hormones, sweating, regulating of the blood flow to different muscles, respiratory rate, and etc. The autonomic nervous system is further split into branches. These are the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system, when activated, produces a flight or fight response. Whenever we actually threaten, our natural inclination is either to fight to protect ourselves or to flight to run away from danger. Potentially stressful situation will activate the central nervous system and prepare your body for fighting or running by producing the following responses, amongst others, within your body. So first of all, release of stress hormones that elevate your heart rate and blood pressure. Shunting the blood away from your internal organs to the skin and the muscles of the extremities. That will greatly reduce or stop at all digestive and elimination processes. Increase sweating. This is another thing that occurs. You've probably experienced these responses when suddenly faced with a frightening or challenging situation. The central nervous system is often referred as to catabolic, or tissue destructive system. So when your fight or flight response is activated, levels of the stress hormone cortisol are elevated. If the cortisol levels are above normal, your growth and repair hormones are suppressed, so you don't have recovery. Long-term overproduction of cortisol will lead to breakdown of body tissues and fatigue of the adrenal glands. You probably heard about adrenal fatigue. As the adrenals fatigue, the body is unable to maintain balance between stress and immune hormones, which can lead to immune system dysfunction. Then the diseases are invited to come into our body. Many years of chronic stress, that's what happens. It results in disease and premature death. So I mentioned the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system last time. Very quickly, just to remind you, part of the autonomic nervous system is the sympathetic nervous system. Often when it's activated, often as a response to stress. It results in release of stress hormones, increasing your heart rate and blood pressure while decreasing the digestion and repair processes. So often is referred as the fight or flight response. Here, I just want to mention that some people it seems like they digest the food too fast when the system hits the sympathetic nervous system, but it's actually the food just goes through the digestive tract, but it's not assimilated. The nutrients are not assimilated. This is for the people who lose weight during the enormous excessive stress. It seems like they digest fast, but they don't digest. Very often in the stools, you can see pieces of food. The parasympathetic nervous system is also part of the autonomic nervous system, which supports digestive and repair processes, opposes the effects of the sympathetic nervous system. So when we are repeatedly stressed, you're continually mobilizing your energy reserves to immediate use. So at the same time, the parasympathetic nervous system is suppressed. So there is no production and recovery of new tissue or repair of tissue. The parasympathetic nervous system stimulates digestion, metabolism, and the release of tissue-building hormones like growth hormone, testosterone, estrogen, and others, DHEA. In the parasympathetic nervous system, if it's constantly shut down, you are unable to effectively digest foods and repair your body. This overstimulation of the central nervous system is a common cause of many chronic fatigue states and chronic diseases processes, not to mention emotional balances and distress. And I would like to offer you some points for managing stress. First of all, we need to identify our primary stressors. Focusing on reducing stress in the area that is causing you the most stress is very important. Generally, the reptilian priorities are security, sustenance, and sex. Alleviating the chief stresses in your life often creates a domino effect, wiping out or dramatically reducing other stressors in succession. Make a plan. That's what I do with my clients. It's very important. You're not going to heal without a plan. Even when you go to a doctor, he tells you or she, this is the plan. You take this pill, that pill, then we reevaluate, we do another blood test, we do this or that. There must be a plan. It must be a realistic plan to address your biggest stress or set a series of achievable short-term goals, allowing you to clearly recognize progress as it happens, following up with your plan, collect feedback, and act on it in order to improve. So another effective method is to find someone who has already been successful at overcoming the challenge you now face. There is no better teacher than experience. I can tell you that I learned so many things in theory, but when you work with people, it's always a little change, a little different because we are different. Eat and drink right. Right? This is important. Internal stressors only serve to magnify into external stressors. Remember that? Internal stressors only serve to magnify external stressors, regardless of what your primary stressor may be. If you aren't eating according to your metabolic type, you will not be able to effectively replace stress hormones you're using on a daily basis, which only causes more stress to the body. Once you know your metabolic type, go out of your way to eat as much organic and free-range food as possible. The more conventionally farmed food you eat, the more toxins you are consuming. These toxic poisons create significant stress at a metabolic level, and many of them have been linked to mental and emotional dysfunction. So another thing is dehydration. This is a common cause for internal stress. A reduction of as little as 1% of water content in your central nervous system can cause significant psychological disorders. Reducing your intake of coffee, tea, and sodas, plus drinking more high-quality water is an easy way to start reducing the internal stress on your body. Another thing is move and exercise. You can't skip that. You just can't. Regular exercise can be a major tool to reduce stress. When performed correctly for your particular needs, exercise in the correct dose stimulates an anabolic tissue growth and repair environment. Your exercise program should be carefully constructed so as not to overstress your body. This is very important. Overstressed body due to exercise can lead to injuries and even sickness because the immune system goes down and does not function properly. Mental exercise, you're a living magnet, and you inevitably attract into your life the people, circumstances, ideas, and resources in harmony with your dominant thoughts. So many successful individuals give credit to the power of positive thinking. Why? Because the positive thinking changes the hormonal balance in our body. Try harmonizing your thoughts, for example, with words and actions as well, with your goals, and you might find that this will help to decrease stress a lot. Doing so is a very good example of beneficial mental or psychic stress. Make sure you're talking and thinking about what you do want rather than what you don't want. And with this, I will finish today's live. And I'm really hoping that you took away the importance of the stress, the work on the stress impact on your physical and mental body. Thank you very much for watching.
Leave a question or comment and we'll be glad to answer. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.